One field, one season, tale of Kenan Stadium. I guess just to start it off, we want to give you just a little history of where the year we're talking about is 2017. You know, not this past year, but the one before that. That's where this story starts. But to get that started, we go back to 2015 when Kenan Stadium, you see this white or stone scar down the middle of the field. They decided that they needed to replace a storm main that was underneath the field, a huge storm main. I don't remember how big, Casey, several feet.
It was 20 feet deep, 72-inch pipe. So pretty
big
solid pipe
that goes right through Central Campus. It had to be replaced. It was structurally suspicious or whatever. So basically, Casey got a brand new sand-based field. We were fortunate enough to build that in 2015. And there was a lot of reinforcement done because of unsuitable soils underneath it. So you had a special type of structural geotextile in between the drain lines, a stone base, a typical 4-inch gravel, 10-inch sand root zone with big gun irrigation that was left in place that went into this field. And so that was the canvas Casey had to work with in 15 and 16, and that brings us to, this is actually in 15 when we were laying the sod and finishing that job. So what I want you to notice in this picture is that the hedges, you know, Kenan Stadium, like several others around the country, the hedges are sort of an iconic look, a very important thing for certain alumni that have a lot of money, and they like that look. There's also a asphalt, probably a 12 to 15 foot wide asphalt track around portions of that field. You see we got trucks parked on it right now. There's a chain link fence in the body of that hedge, and that actually had a couple athletes in the end zone do a header into that hedge and eat the chain link fence. And so there were some issues with that, but that's something that comes into play as we get into this 2017 season. So that's what we were starting with when 2017 came along.
All right, so Chad just gave you a little background of getting a brand new sand-based field. Also in 2015, we started a facilities master plan, $120 million project to redo a lot of different facilities on campus. Part of the main two facilities we were going to build was an indoor football complex that would be used by multiple teams when needed, and then a brand new soccer lacrosse stadium. The way our campus is laid out, we don't have a lot of land for athletic stuff. So if we wanted to build these new facilities, we had to build them on the current site of the old facility. So really meant demoing the old stadium, the old practice fields, and really displacing football, soccers, and lacrosses for at least a year. The construction we thought would take from May of 2017 to August of 18. Needless to say, you will find out that did not hold up at all. Here's the, hang on a second. Yep, so here's the conceptual drawing of our indoor facility that we were going to build, 120-yard full field, inlaid with the game painting, end zones, argyle border, all that stuff. We were going to have a full-size outdoor synthetic field and then a full-size outdoor grass field adjacent to that. On the other side of our indoor facility, this is our new soccer lacrosse stadium. It was a new team building with locker rooms for women's lacrosse and men's and women's soccer. We brand new sand-based field, all new seats, bleachers. So pretty much starting from scratch on this one. Here's an overhead shot of everything that we were doing. This picture was taken 2 weeks ago. So this is kind of where we're at. Finish date on this project was supposed to be August 1 of 2018. We are not very close at the moment. We've had a lot of issues with weather, things underground, just a lot of things out of everybody's control. But you can see right here, we've got the sands graded out. That's going to be the grass field over here on the left. The synthetic field is going to be in between the grass field and the building. And then the soccer lacrosse stadium over to the right is being prepped for sod. And we're getting close. We're probably going to sod next week or the week after. So just give you a little idea of the area. In the meantime, while we were doing that, we also built this facility about a mile off campus. Brand new track, 2 synthetic fields, one for men's and women's lacrosse, one for soccer, and then across the road we put in two brand new Latitude 36 fields. This whole area is in a floodplain, so during the last year with a couple of hurricanes we've had up to 10 feet of water flood this area. So brand new facility. I won't say destroyed, but it's been a mess over the last year. So
the discussion was, okay, for 17, we're not going to have any practice facilities for football. Nowhere for football to go. Soccer had a place, lacrosse, nowhere for football. So we got to go in the stadium. What do we do? Well, initially the only discussion that was held, at the athletic, whatever Casey's bosses or whoever's level, the assumption was, well, it's going to be synthetic, right? It's got to be synthetic. We're going to practice every practice, every game, everything. So we were asked to pull numbers together to make it synthetic, and while we were doing that, Casey and I were talking. I'm like, you know what? That will buy a lot of grass. I mean, it was going to be take out a brand new sand-based field and put in a synthetic field, and then the next season take out the synthetic field and go back to grass because they wanted to go back to grass. So it just didn't make a lot of sense economically, to do that. So one thing that really, and another part of that was to take out the hedges. The hedges we showed you in an earlier slide just to gain more room because, again, you're talking about a team that was used to having 2 full-size grass fields, now having to practice on 1. So we need to give them every square foot of space possible to make that happen. One thing that sort of played into that is, you got to have a really strong grass to make that happen. And 10 years ago, this really wasn't a possibility or practicality, but we had used a product that we grow, game on grass, for immediate play situations. Casey had used some at his facilities and others that we work with. It's sod that's grown on plastic with an engineered soil that drains vertically. It's made out of sand and 1.5 inches plus thick, 17 pounds per square foot. It's just a really heavy immediate play type product. And so the idea was, even if we do that, potentially for every single home game, it would still be cheaper than going synthetic and going back. And so that's what made this sort of seem possible and plausible in this situation. So we started talking about it, pitched it to his boss and others, and so here we have more options now. Do we go synthetic over the entire field? Yeah. Take out the hedges. Do we use synthetic turf on the sidelines and leave the middle natural grass? That's an option. Remove the hedges in either scenario, or do we just do nothing? Do we just let it go with what it is and hope for the best? So those were sort of the options we started looking at. And
in this whole process, Coach Fedora was a big player in this, obviously because it was his field, but he was a grass guy. When Chad and I first started thinking about the idea of using the game on grass and could we resod and blah blah, just all of that stuff, we took it to my boss and said, hey, we could maybe save some money on this, keep it grass. And Coach Fedora was definitely on our team with let's keep grass in the stadium if we need to. So like Chad said, we had all these options. Needed to figure out what we were going to do. This picture.
I'd say one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, any questions y'all have, please, let's bring them up as we go. Yep. We're happy to, we hope we all can learn something or at least gain from experiences here. So if you have something, just don't mind interrupting us. So this was the current footprint then. You can see the hedges once again. You can see the road. It ended up being a pretty good amount of area that we could pick up. The next slide, Casey's this is our one entrance / exit into the stadium. It was one tunnel, and it emptied into a small, narrow, very busy parking lot. That to get in that parking lot, you had to go through a parking deck. So a very complicated access. but you can see the amount of room we had here on the sides potentially to pick up. Also notice all the manholes and all the located lines there. There's a lot of stuff underneath that field and underneath those sidelines.
So, we've talked about the idea of keeping grass now. So we had a couple factors we needed to really consider. The natural grass versus synthetic field. The synthetic option was going to be about $1.4 million. Because Coach Fedora was a grass person, he wanted the synthetic field to be in for 1 year, and he wanted us to pull it back out when the practice fields were done and go back to a grass field. So, we had the price tag of putting the synthetic in and then turning around and ripping it right back out a year or two later and going back grass. We did the math, and we thought we could resod the entire field for every home game of the 2017 season for less than $1 million if we had to. So financially, it was a much easier decision to say we need to keep grass. Our trainers, we went to them. We asked, what do you prefer? Would you prefer grass? Do you prefer synthetic? Their answer was a safe, a nice maintained grass field, in their opinion, was a safer surface and easier to play on than a synthetic. So, we had them in our corner. And obviously, like I said, Coach Fedora was big on keeping grass in the stadium. So look, everybody wants to do this. The question is, can we do it? Is this even possible? Is it possible to practice in there, turn around, strip it out overnight, have it ready for the next day? There were a lot of other factors we needed to consider before just pulling the trigger on it. How long would a resod take? Could we come in and do it overnight? If practice ended at 5 or 6 o'clock, could we have it ready for practice the next day at 3 or 4 o'clock? How many times would we have to do it? We could plan on doing it 7 times, but would we really need to do it 7 times? And then who makes that decision? Do I make that decision? Does the football team make that decision? Does our athletic director make that decision? So, it was a group effort. There was a lot of talks each and every day. Then what about the rain? Football season is obviously during hurricane season. We dealt with a couple of them through this whole process. Would the field be safe if we sodded it and we got 3 or 4 inches of rain? And then could we even paint it if we had to during the rain? Like how do we make this work? Going on Chad's end, can a sod farm even save us 500,000 square foot of sod that we potentially may not use all of it? And then the last thing is, where's it been done before? Where is this sod used at? These professional teams had done it. That was one of Coach Fedora's biggest questions is, what are we going to get? Like, what is this surface? And we explained to them that we've used it on your practice field before. You actually played at Miami. They switched out the midfield logo the week before, or sodded down the middle the week before we were there. And I explained that to him, and he thought that field played really, really well. So, when I told him, hey, you're going to be playing on the same grass that you played on in Miami a couple weeks ago or whenever, then, that eased his, eased him a little bit on that. So here we are. We came up with the synthetic turf sideline natural grass field option. We were, Coach Fedora wanted it. We were going to gain 37,000 square feet of usable synthetic turf on the sideline, and that's going to allow for the all-season drills, the workouts, more room for practice. And what we found out after this is our other sports love to use it too. Swimming goes out and runs. Our soccer's, everybody goes out and trains on that. It doesn't bother us. And then what would we use? We had just put latitude 36 on our new soccer fields. We were still getting the hang of growing it, learning some ins and outs of it, but we really, really liked that grass. So guys at Duke had it. We rode over a couple times, looked at it with them, talked to them about it. So that was how we kind of settled on latitude 36. And then the construction, we could do this. We could do the sidelines from February to August and have them done for the first preseason practice. So
here's the overall layout. And the light green on the perimeter is the synthetic turf, and the dark green is the natural grass.
The dotted line is where the hedges were. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much space we would gain.
So, we went all the way to the wall, so we picked up not only the hedges but that extra room. But look at all these. I just want you to note all these little white lines around the perimeter and through the middle of the field. Those are current utilities. So I don't know how long this stadium's been there, but it was built over a landfill, over a ditch, a long, long time ago. We pulled up like the first flip-flop ever made came out of that area. But a lot of stuff. There's a University of North Carolina Hospital is a pretty important and busy hospital, and it's on top of the hill. All the sewer, live sewer that from the hospital goes right through that field. I mean, it's live 24. I mean, it's a big deal. And so that came into play later. But there's just a lot of stuff in the ground here. And there was a lot of stuff they didn't even know about, you know. So, but this was our plan we started with. Looking at the process, so we put together some bid things that we had to do. We were selected to grow the grass and do the install. It was latitude 36. We had to get all that going pretty quickly, and so sometime in March, all that paperwork basically was done. And Casey and his crew worked with us on some of the specifics, what they wanted, how to cut later in the year, how much ryegrass and things like that. They made visits to the farm. You're actually supposed to be talking about this, I think, Casey. But
well, the height of cut thing was kind of that was something that we didn't really think about until we'd always got sod from Chad, and we just let it come in at whatever he's cutting it at. But we realized a couple times when we brought it in, his mower may be set at a half and ours may be set at a half, but ours may be more aggressive, and we would bring the sod in and we might end up scalping it down. So there were some things that we really had to work on. From Chad worked with us to make it work on our end. Going to when do we sod? So we had decided that we would sod on Thursday night after practice. So practice ended roughly at 6 o'clock on a Thursday night. We could come in, take out the field. The goal was to have the field completely stripped by midnight, have it laid by 7 or 8 the next morning, and then we would turn around and paint it and have it ready for our Friday walkthrough at 3 or 4. So the timeline was really, really tight. And then on top of that, the whole painting thing. Early in the year, painting on Friday morning is fine. Sun comes out, it dries. But what happens in October, November when it's cloudy and the paint doesn't dry? Then we've got to walk through and we've got paint everywhere all over the field. I know some of you have seen our field over the last couple of years. We get to do some pretty neat stuff, I think, painting-wise. Our marketing team lets us do military appreciation or, a whiteout or a blackout or different paint schemes. So we decided this year we weren't going to do any of that. We're going to keep it pretty simple and just try to make it through the season. The other part of the planning, I relied on Chad a lot for this. We've sodded stuff before. We've never sodded something this magnitude. So, we talked, and this was the amount of equipment that Chad thought we would need on site just to get this done.
We basically wanted to double everything. If we normally a job like this, if we're going to replace a field, we'll strip it out one day and we'll sod it the next day. And we've got 70,000 square feet of grass in that footprint, and that's a pretty aggressive, task, but it's doable, and we've done it, and we knew we could do that. All right, so how do we compress that from one, two 12-hour periods basically to one 12-hour period? How do we do that? So you basically double everything. You double all your people, all your equipment. You got to have backups. Through the course of all this, we had a hydraulic line break. We punctured a tire. We tore something up. Things happen. And so you got to have a backup plan because there's no time you can't call a rental company at 3 in the morning, So we just had to double down with everything and try to think through every possible scenario of what's going to limit us, what's going to stop the party, and what's going to be a critical path for our schedule. And the amount of people, there were some days it wasn't that many people. I know the first time we did it, we had a lot of volunteers, and some of you guys are here. But about the third time we did it, we didn't have any volunteers, man. They checked out. I don't know where they went, but all the fun was over then. But so we just had a lot of people. One thing that was really cool about this whole deal is we knew most of the guys on UNC's crew, and they knew most of our guys. But believe me, by the time all this was over, we were all very good friends. Because when you get in the middle of the night doing something and you're up against it, but everybody's in it together, and you know there's no option, there's no fail, there's no quit. It's got to happen. And so it was really cool getting to bond with those guys, and that was a special part of this job, to basically become one team over the course of a season.
Yep. So what you're seeing up here, this is basically all the equipment that we had on the field as we did this job. That doesn't count anything that we had off the field or at the farm. Yeah, Jesse, go ahead.
Were you allowed to keep your lights on overnight?
We were.
You don't have any houses or anything around?
No, we don't ever have any problems. There's a couple dorms nearby, but they don't seem to bother them. So I'm sure if we would have had a complaint, we would have nicely said this is priority. But no, we didn't have any complaints with that. So, and then I mean, this is so that, like I said, all that other stuff was on the field. This is the stuff off the field. We had 24 loads of sod coming in, 30 to 35 loads being hauled off. Coordinate with the Department of Public Safety on trying to close some parking lots or block this or that off or things like that. The other question, the major question we had was, where do we dump this stuff at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m.? You can't just take it to the dump or whatever. Luckily, we had a guy on our staff that has a farm close by, and Chad worked out an agreement with him to dump out there.
Which meant putting a dozer out there, putting light towers out there. What do we do when it rains? We had to improve a road. I mean, again, what potential scenario is going to trip us up here? Luckily, we had a little bit of time to think about it, but every day seemed to be, I would call Casey like, well, what about this? Or he'd call me, what about that? And fortunately, we had enough time to I think we covered most of the bases before it all happened.
Yeah, and then the last part of that was, storing the equipment. If there was any way we could let Chad leave the equipment on site somewhere on campus so that, if we had to turn around and do this 7 days later, he didn't have to take the equipment all the way back to Charlotte and load it up and come all the way back with it. So that was some stuff we looked at, finding areas like that. So here's the main timeline for that whole scenario. February 13th, we began construction. We were going to have commencement. We always have commencement on our football field in the early part of May. So we knew we were going to run into that a little bit. Part of the plan was, let's do a little bit of this before and a little bit after commencement. Or no, maybe we thought we were going to get it all done. I don't remember how it worked out. I think so, yeah. After commencement, you'll see a picture. Commencement pretty much destroys the field, so we always resod after commencement. We would have summer camps. That's always a very tight window. We sod May 17th and try to get on it on early June, but it works. And July 30th, construction would be completed, and we were going to start practice on August 2nd. And then on August 31st, we would start this process of resodding the field before the first game. So this is our sod schedule that we came up with that we thought we would have to do. So sod the entire field the week before the California game. We would have 4 practices, a walkthrough, then play Louisville. We didn't think we'd have to do anything to the field between week 1 and 2. That sod will hold up for the 4 practices. Between Louisville and Duke would be 8 practices, 2 walkthroughs. We knew the middle might get a little beat up, so we had planned to sod between the hashes. Between Duke and Notre Dame, 8 more practices, 2 walkthroughs. Notre Dame was a big game for us. That's obviously, playing Notre Dame is a big game for anybody, but national TV, we were going to sod the whole field. We thought it'd be pretty beat up. We played Virginia the week later. We weren't going to do any sod, for Virginia after just 3 practices and a walkthrough. Going into the Miami game, we thought we would have to sod between the hashes again. We're getting late in the year. Bermuda grass is kind of shutting down. Ryegrass ain't going to hold up as good. So let's resod between the hashes. And then going into the Western game, we would do the whole field. 10 practices this late in the year. No way it's holding up like we want it to. But we also knew we had high school state championships and the Carolina Bowl, which was a junior Shrine Bowl coming up. So we wanted to have a brand new field going into all that. And then looking past all of this, we also knew we were going to be playing lacrosse in our stadium in the spring. So getting a brand new field in for Western Carolina was something we had planned on doing.
So here we started. This is when what is that? February 13th. This is when we started the process. The first thing that we had to do was put in a chain link fence perimeter inside the field. because they were going to be having spring practice and conditioning workouts throughout this entire process. And so we had to build a ramp to get them into the end of the field. It's to the left. You can't really, no, it's to the right, isn't it? Yeah. You can't really see it either way, but we had to establish that perimeter. So this is starting first day. Then we started profiling out the sides where the concrete curb was going to go for the synthetic turf and natural turf interface. Another thing that we had to do here, the original collector line is over there by the hedges from the field we built 2 years earlier. So we had to come inside off of this profile and dig down, terminate our laterals, and install a new collector line there. And inside the profile of our grass field, and tie that in to the storm drain system and create another drainage system for the synthetic side. So that really didn't look too bad, but it got really complicated after that. We kept motoring forward. Here we have a month later, roughly, in late March, we have the concrete curb in. At this time, we decided, or the decision was made, the big gun irrigation system that was in there was an older system with, the impact heads that you put in and they stay up top. Casey really wanted a new system, and I did too, but they decided to do that there.
Part of the issue with our irrigation system is it was very old. We pulled a valve out that I have no idea how we were getting water through. It was so rusted and old. But we weren't allowed to put a new irrigation system in. We needed to get, we irrigate off of reclaimed water, so we had to get a permit to do that. That permit was going to take 6 weeks, and we didn't have that time. So luckily, we worked with people on campus, and they said, you can't put a new one in, design it, but if you mess that one up, you can fix it. So by mess it up, we really messed it up. We didn't add any heads. We had 6 before we started. We ended with 6. We did move them just a little bit, but we did get a brand new HD PE loop all the way around the field. So
you can sort of see the box going in there on the near front part of the picture there, center midfield.
Yeah, we've got another picture coming up in a minute to kind of show that too. So that'll.
But that work started happening, asphalt coming out, a lot of utility work and treasure found in the process going on there. So that's a month into it. This is what we were dealing with, practices and balls flying over there, and this field is really a corridor through campus. It's not at all uncommon for kids to, cut through the stadium getting from point A to B. So really just trying to, how cattle go down the same path. That's the way people are, and just to get them to understand, hey, you can't walk through there, and we had to barricade off areas, but it actually went pretty well. But they painted it up for recruiting, and we're really starting along this time. I think you can see the HDPE pipe, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that's what I did on the left side. On the right side, somewhere in this process, they decided, while we got this thing torn up, we ought to replace all of our electrical and all the utilities and all the ESPN and all the whatever else. And we can just snap our fingers and make that happen, But so the change orders that occurred through this job ended up being well more than what the original job was going to be. I mean, it over doubled. But all these things were basically thrown in, but the end date didn't change. We still had to have it ready, for the first football practice.
So Chad touched on it a little bit. Obviously, we've got this painted up. I don't remember what day this was, but I think we had junior day or official recruiting day coming in. So, we were still mowing. We were still maintaining the field, the best we could without irrigation at this point, too. So we needed rainfall, timely rainfall, and we got it. So we were doing pretty good. This next slide, Chad can tell you a little bit about what he had to do for this, but this was pretty cool for us. In the middle of this construction project, football went from Nike to Jumpman. So they wanted us, the company came in from L.A., a production company. They shot a commercial with Michael Jordan. We painted the logo on the field. Highlight of my career, maybe, he walked out and said, "Man, this grass is really nice." So I thought that was awesome. But,
But we had to take our chain link fence down because they said it looked like a prison yard, and we had to move equipment around because of the camera angles. They couldn't let this be seen as a construction site, which it totally was. And I was told to leave before MJ showed up. So, but it was cool to sort of see that happen. But the things that you don't see coming that come at you, this shot a couple days for us, We had to quit, and, just things like that kept reoccurring through this. This is some of the little conduit and infrastructure job that we would do. This went all the way around the field. This bank of conduit poured in concrete, and as we were digging this, we were going over, under, and around terracotta pipe from the 50s with live sewer in it, section pipe. And the whole thing would just sit there quivering, and you're just waiting for disaster to strike. But so it was like a treasure hunt, inch by inch going through here. The irrigation was in and around this somehow too. I don't know how, but it eventually all came together. This is
one of the guns we put in. Like I said, there's 6 of these, so it goes into the synthetic turf. The turf goes over it. We had a big gun system, so we knew what we were getting with this. It was easy to do the math and figure out the flow and pressure. And, so these things are throwing, this one at midfield will throw all the way to the goal line, or on a good day, it'll throw almost to the corner head. So you don't quite have head-to-head coverage, a lot of it, but it works great. This is a really, really good system that we're glad we have. One of the main reasons we put this in, too, is because we didn't want to have to put the gun in, run the water, take it out the next day for practice, or have somebody stay after practice and put them in. With this system, comes on, goes down, you never know it's there. So never interrupt practice or do anything like that.
So here we are a month later, April 24th. We have the near side ready to go. That's the stone base in all the way around each end. But because of the far side, OWASA, which is Orange County Water and Sewer Authority, they, at that point in time, after at least 2 years of debate and them not wanting to fix anything or pay for anything, now they decided all of a sudden that terracotta, 2 terracotta sanitary sewer lines from the hospital must be replaced. And we're like, are you serious now, right now? And yeah, it's got to happen. So that's why the other side is in limbo. There was a period of time we had to stop and wait and see what would happen. So then we had graduation, which is a pretty big event in Chapel Hill. So you can see the right side is just basically with concert-type flooring, drivable flooring to cover up. So we had all this stuff exposed, right? We had all this treasure hunt going on that sideline, and we had to fill it all in, cover it for graduation, get through graduation, and then dig it all back out again and let them replace the sewer. And if you've ever done that, which I've never done that, but you stop your sewer from coming in, you pump it with portable lines to the outfall, and you replace it. So it's a live, monitored system throughout that process. It's a big deal. And the hospital can't obviously be shut down. So, I mean, it was quite a joy to add this added to your project. But field turf's already in on the left side. Here we are after graduation. The field had been resodded with regular sod, I believe, Casey, right?
Yeah, we went. This is kind of our yearly thing after graduation. If we go back a slide, you can see that stage takes a week or so to put up. It's not that big. We think it could be done faster, but you'll see a picture later. The field ends up being in pretty bad shape after graduation. So we come in, take it out. That's kind of our transition, or it has been for the last couple of years. That's what that's the power of a football team. That's what they requested. We don't want to see the transition in the summer. What can you do? And the answer was, well, we can reside it after graduation, and that's what we end up doing.
You can see the traco in the right part of the screen. You can see the big ductile iron pipe stacked up there on the far sideline. They're getting ready to put that sewer system in. Again, you're all going through one door, through one alleyway that's probably 200 feet long or so, and there's other things that occur within that corridor as well. But everything's coming in and out of that door on the left side.
So just when they get good and rolling again on construction, the town of Chapel Hill always has 4th of July fireworks. So this one didn't stop it as bad, I don't think, but it stopped you for a couple days, didn't it?
Yeah, and we had to cover up all our holes so nobody had fallen in a hole out there, but we didn't have to put down protective flooring. But then, so where the fireworks are going off, on the right side, that has field turf on it now, which of course is plastic, which does great with fireworks, So they ask a question, well, will fireworks hurt this? And we're like, oh, yeah, probably, And so they covered it somehow. I wasn't there for that fun. That was Casey's problem, but pretty big fireworks show, pretty big crowd.
It's more than we had for a football game.
And here we are finishing up the very end of July, just prior to practice. So we made the deadline. We got there probably 10 minutes before this picture was taken. But there you have your synthetic perimeter and your natural grass field.
So at this point, Chad's basically done a lot of work over the last couple months, but now it's our turn. You look on the sidelines, you can tell, obviously we have a ton of room, but we have all the equipment that we used to have at our practice facility now spread out and, jammed into the stadium. One of the things that we were responsible for later on was removing all of that equipment on a Friday before a home game or a Thursday, and then on Monday putting it all back for practice. So that took some time. It took a lot of work to do that. So we're getting ready for practice this year. All right, we went from three fields, basically 180,000 square feet that the team was using at the old site, down to 90,000 square feet. Obviously, they're going to have to adjust their practice plan a little bit. They've got to figure out how to make this work. To maximize the space, we talked to them, and they asked for one full-length field, like normal, and then 2 half fields painted sideways. I think they were going to run offense on one, defense on the other, and then, do stuff together on the long field. The question we had was this: would we do this for the entire season, or would we just do it for the preseason? If we had to paint this for the entire season, it was going to be a problem, because here's what we ended up painting for first practice. It was, I don't know how they knew what they were doing, but we painted the blue field sideways, and the concern was if we have to paint this every week, we're going to have to play a game. The games we don't resod, we're going to have lines out there going everywhere. So we were looking into removable paint, things we could do. Luckily, when we got out of the preseason to the first game, they asked just to go to the one long field. But we kept that painted for the entire preseason. You can see we even extended it over to the turf, so they had about 50 yards on each field to work with, and they used every bit of it. So, managing the practices for them, we talked with the coaches, we talked with the equipment people, we talked with everybody. Do as much as you can on the synthetic turf. Keep all the drills, the ladder drills, the sleds, the dummies. Do all that on the turf. Understand we had to get them to understand this is the only field they have, and if they tear it up within the first couple practices, they're going to be playing on it. And then just move around, use the entire field. Don't destroy one area. They struggled with this. They got in their habits of putting the ball in the 35 and not moving the ball. So we fought that for a while. So here's a comparison picture. Practice 1 right before we started, and then after practice 8. We were curious to see how this was going to go. We had never put 85 to 90 guys on one field before like this, so we didn't know how it was going to hold up. But you can see after 8 practices, we were really excited about how it was holding up. Trying to manage the field during this was all new to us. We'd never dealt with this. We had a foliar fertilizer after practice 12, and then aerofine it. Everything that we would go out there and see 80, 90 guys running around, and you could just feel the field getting hard. It was getting compacted, and everything that we wanted to do was, pull a core, air fight, open it up. But what we didn't want to do is pull a core and then, compromise the structure of the soil and have it tear up more. So, we debated, do we pull a core? Do we use a solid tine, a bayonet tine? What do we do? Top dressing it. We were getting some areas that were getting a little unlevel. They would wear out a hash or do this or that. So we debated, should we top dress the whole field? We don't want to put too much out and make it sandy. So what we ended up doing at least once a week probably was just a light top dressing down the middle. And then we rolled the field a couple times with a roller. We had a 3-ton roller. We found that it helped get some of those divots, imperfections out and level it out pretty good. So here we are from practice 8 to practice 18. At this point, we're still really, really happy with how the field's holding up. You can see there's somewhere areas over on that right picture, but nothing too bad yet. They've worked with us. They've moved around. The weather's been great. We hadn't had a practice yet where it's been raining, so it's been dry. It's been nice. And like I said, we're extremely pleased where we're at with that. We went out with some 15.500 at a pound after practice 20. And the field was still firm and smooth. I mean, it was playing great. At this point, we really started to question, are we going to need to reside this field for the first game? It was holding up good. We rolled it a couple more times to smooth it out. Then practice changed. They asked us to stop painting the 2 sideways fields. They only wanted the 100-yard field. So the wear started to concentrate more towards the middle of the field, in between the hashes. And 2 weeks before the first game, it got a little more intense. We did some scrimmages. We really got after it, got aggressive. So practice 18 to practice 25, we went downhill pretty quick. So, it was all it could take. At this point, we know we're going to have to reside. But, we planned on this, so nothing that completely shocked us with that. So here's after practice 25. This is actually when we're getting ready to go out inside, but we took some pictures just to kind of document how the field looked, and it wasn't terrible. We probably could have played on it, but going into the season, first game, we wanted to start fresh. Here's another shot that you can see how level the field is. It looks, to me in this picture, it looks firm, but you can see, the structure's still there. There's not a lot of leaf blade. The color's a little off, so overall not bad, but we were going to replace it. So, I don't know why that. So game week rolls around. For the last 6-8 months, Chad and I have been talking. Here's our plan when game week rolls around. Thursday night, we'll be ready to rock and roll at 6 p.m. Let's start, cut it out. Then we looked at the forecast. They were calling rain from Thursday morning to Saturday morning, pretty much nonstop. And this was, in our mind, the worst case scenario. The one thing that really could not stop us but make this really difficult was rain, and we were going to get it. So we started calling Chad. I sat down with my boss, and I said, look, here's the options that we have. We could do nothing to the entire field. Like I said, it wasn't in terrible shape. I think we could have played on it. We could have top dressed it with some green sand, fix it up a little bit. We could saw between the hashes. We do nothing again. I don't know why do the entire field. And then we started talking, do we move the side to Wednesday night? So that phone call, that's when I called Chad, and I said, Chad, listen, this is Wednesday morning. I said, can we reside tonight instead of tomorrow night? So
that was a joyous time in my company.
What Chad did was actually drove up that day. It was Chad, myself, my boss, and Sammy, and we were walking around, and my boss was about to lose his mind. He was worried, and he was trying to make the call. He was like, I think we just need to side the middle and be done with it. And Chad and I were both telling him, no, we need to do the whole field. And he said, well, how are you going to paint if it rains? And I said, well, it's easy. We're sitting on a pallet of aerosol. We'll aerosol the whole field if we have to, lines, numbers, hashes. And he said, you got to prove to me that that'll work. So we drug a water hose out. We painted the 5 on the 50 with aerosol, and then 10 seconds later, Sammy took the water hose and hit it pretty hard, and the paint didn't go anywhere. So we convinced him that we could paint the field. It relieved him a little bit, but he was still Chad can explain it. He was a nervous wreck there for a couple hours.
I'll never forget standing on that field and Mike, his boss, said prove it, and Sammy hit it with the aerosol, and he had a quick coupler. And Sammy Germain is not a halfway kind of guy. He's all in. And he hit that quick coupler, and I'm like thinking, easy, Sammy, this whole thing's going to go down the tubes. But it worked. And splashed water all over everybody's feet, but it worked. But so here we are the day of now, thinking that we're 36 hours away from this move. Now we're about 6 minutes away from this move. So here's what it involves from my end. Bear in mind, we typically are running 7 construction projects with 50 people. That's what our company does. And we have 10 people associated with the sod farms and office and mechanics and all that. So we're running jobs, and I'm trying to pull a guy from Jesse's job at UVA, a crew, and not let Jesse know about it, and get down there, and I'm pulling one from wherever, from Tennessee or South Carolina or whatever, and make this thing happen without totally, stopping the flow of business. And now that all changes instantly. So I've got 24 truck drivers that are ready to pick up a load of sod Thursday afternoon that need to be there now in a few hours. And so it's a lot to try to process. But here's what we were doing. Also, none of that equipment was at the stadium. That equipment was scattered all over the southeast United States. I mean, some of it was ready to go, but some of it was on other jobs. So we started scrambling, and we showed up. I guess the first thing that happened is we started getting prepared to harvest sod at the farm. And then we started getting our crews there. This is what the farm looks like. I think there's 6 or 7 trucks here lined up. And, we'll start harvesting middle of the afternoon or whatever. It's about a 3-hour trip to the site. You can't get there too early because you can imagine what a college campus is like before 5 p.m. And so you got to stage them in certain places. You got to, work with public safety. It's got to be a coordinated effort. We're harvesting into the night. We're getting trucks there through the night. And we're, that's what's going on with 10 or so people back home. And then at the field, so this is, Casey snapped this one, 6:36 p.m. The team was off the field, and here we go, no turning back. First bit of sod coming out, and he's a pretty good photographer. You can see the hairs from the stolons in there, or the roots. I mean, there was still a lot of, this part of the field was actually great. It was just the middle. And honestly, it was a lot more cosmetic than it was structural, but decision was made to let's replace it, so let's go. We started running 2 machines. All the while, we're loading trucks as they come out and hauling away. First sod trucks are coming in soon thereafter. This is just a good picture showing the coordinated effort. That's Sammy on the 3-wheeler there, and our guys out working. Stripping, grading, prepping, laying, picking up tubes, picking up scraps, getting net, going and getting pizza, whatever it took to keep the party going.
Yeah, this was definitely changing the day up through everything in a loop for everybody. I had to go to my guys and ask them, hey, I know you're planning on going home or picking up your kids, but any way you can spend the night tonight, so. That's what it ended up being. And, luckily for me, they all were on board.
It's our first gig, 6 months of planning, and here we are.
We realized, too, that everybody was going to be looking at us on this one. People were up in the football building and at the other end of the stadium, and everybody had their eye on it. Like, we had to get this one right. And again, we laugh about this a lot, but our boss was out there doing anything he could do to help, and finally we were like, you need to just go home. But we just snapped a bunch of pictures through this process. We wanted to document it, a lot for this reason. But because we had a brand new sand-based field just 2 years earlier, cutting this sod up, we were down to some really good, nice sand. The weather that night couldn't have been any better. I think the low was 75 with a slight breeze. So, we pulled it up, and once we teed it up and got it raked out a little bit, it dried perfect. So, the situation for this first night, weather-wise, was perfect.
So here we are, just short of an hour after we started, the first run of sod goes down. So, we're still stripping grass off, but we're also bringing it in the building and getting it going back down. This is the first roll or the first run, just short of an hour later. And that's going on the left side of the field with 2 installers and a sidekick. And meanwhile, back on the right side, we're still stripping and hauling and floating out grade. Sidekick's a big part of what we do. It's a great tool for pushing that heavy grass around and getting seams tight. We used to do it with rakes and people get tired, and it's really worked well for us. Again, Casey, the photographer, I think he did some work that night, but he took a lot of pictures too. So. Meanwhile, out in the parking lot, we're running 4 of those dump trailers. You see 2 of them there. We're running 4 of those with 2 combinators. We're loading out trucks. The white truck in the middle is a sod truck trying to unload. And, back behind there, that's the very sharp turn of a underground parking deck you have to come in to access. And then you have to come towards us in this picture and go out the back side of the stadium through the hospital parking lot. It's a one-way street. And it's not really meant for semis. It's possible, but it's not an easy turn. Meanwhile, there are coaches' offices in this corridor. Up top, there is a main cafeteria. Students are used to walking through this corridor just like a big sidewalk. It's a highly trafficked area. I don't know what all coaches' offices are there, but there are a lot of teams in this building. And they're coming off practice, they're in cleats or whatever, softball knows in there, a lot of the women's sports. And these kids aren't paying attention, they're looking at their phone. They're just doing what they've done every day of their life. But now it's a construction site, and now it's daylight. But in the next slide.
So real quick on this slide, one thing we underestimated, and even moving it up 24 hours caused a much bigger problem, but this is a parking lot for everybody that Chad just talked about, for administrators that work in that building. So when we started that night, that was a full parking lot of cars, and it was chaos. Trucks were getting stuck, cars were, getting stuck. They couldn't get out. It turned out to be a pretty big disaster on the first time. Later on, we got public safety to block the lot off. One thing Chad didn't mention about the trucks is they were still coming from the farm, and they would get there before we needed them. So we were staging them at our basketball arena about a half a mile away and radioing them over when they needed to come over. One of the other things that was made very clear to us is, like Chad said, they had to go out by the hospital. Under no circumstance could a truck stop there and block the hospital drive. That's where the EMS and ambulances come in to get to the emergency room. So there were a lot of rules and stipulations that we had to abide by just outside of this area to get this done.
So that's what it looks like at night, and most of the kids come down that upper stairwell there, pop out of that door right to where we're loading trucks. And you know what it's like in a skid loader. You can't see very well behind you. That's where they're coming out at. It was a very stressful situation. And the entryway getting in and out of there is, again, one tunnel. But as it got to be, 10, 11 o'clock, things started slowing down. Here we are at midnight. The field's stripped. We have about a third plus of the field sodded. We're working hard in the parking lot to get rid of the remaining spoils and get the rest of the sod in there. So we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, at this point we felt good. We had put the timeline out before we started at where we wanted to be, and at midnight we're this far along. We're starting to feel pretty good. We love the sod. The quality of the sod coming in is unbelievable. So
basically,
we know it's going to work.
5.5 hours into the job.
So, we get my phone died after that, so that was the end of the pictures until now. But, we were going to get rain coming up the next day, so we really wanted to get a wetting agent out. There were times where we sodded, knowing we were going to get rain. We would sod, roll it, solid tine it, or bayonet tine it, or do something to put a hole in it, and then re-roll it or spray it with a wetting agent. So, here's this picture. We're spraying the field. I'm not even sure we're done laying sod yet. The equipment's still in the background. We hadn't even gotten it off the field yet. But this is the kind of time frame we were under. We didn't have time to, do things like we normally would do them. So, here we are spraying. And then we immediately went into painting. I don't know. A lot of you probably marked off a football field from scratch in the stencils and laying it out. It's not the most fun thing to do. It's definitely not the most fun thing to do when you've already been up for 24 hours, and resodding the whole field. So here's a couple pictures of our guys. We made this stencil to paint the Argyle border. We've got some other stencils. On a normal week, we might paint the white on Thursday, the blue on Friday, spend 3 or 4 hours doing each. We had to do the whole thing in 3 or 4 hours. So, we had guys doing all kinds of stuff. Guys that had never painted before were painting. We were doing things, just out of the ordinary for us. Here's a picture of, you see AJ's painting here, and then we've got guys in the back just continuing to do some other things. So, everybody got on board with what we were doing. I do not. So this is 12:15 the next day. We started at 6 p.m. on Wednesday night. This is 12:15 on Thursday. So the one thing we didn't do, that picture was from a later game. We didn't put the Argyle on the first game. We decided we were tired, and that didn't go over well. So we had the Argyle in for every other game. But as you can see, the field turned out great. I don't know that – I think people came to the game and had no idea that it had just been sodded, within 36 hours of the game. So extremely pleased with how it turned out. Everybody from football staff to administrators to, even us, we're just ecstatic about the way it looked. So here's a timeline of that whole 2-day event. We started cutting the sod at 6:30-ish. We laid the first roll around 7:30. The whole field was out by 11:30. 3:30 a.m. we were laying the stencils out as Chad's guys were still laying the sod. Finished the sod that morning, started painting at 8, and like the last picture, by 12:15 we were done. One of the coolest things about this whole project that we were able to do is set up a GoPro for that first time and do a time-lapse video. So you're going to see in this video just the whole process that we've just talked about. From cutting it out to laying it to painting the field. This is one of the really happy we were able to do this.
Couldn't find any cool music to go with it though, but you can use your imagination. Had a pizza break right there, pizza time.
So we had a lot of guys. It was nice. We had guys that were stripping, guys that were laying, people that volunteers, people that were coming by with trash bags, picking up the net, the scraps, and you really don't realize how much that helps until they're there doing, or until they're not there doing it. So, we get it. Here we are getting our stencils out as they're still laying sod. We sprayed the wetting agent somewhere in here. There we go. Ran our irrigation to kind of knock it down.
Working both end zones, same time. Casey had his crew tuned up. Everybody, this was just fun to watch at this point. We're in the parking lot cleaning up, getting stuff out of the way, and they're making the paint happen.
So there it is. We got the first one done. And then we only had 6 more to go after that. So. Yeah, it did. We got around. We got over an inch of rain Friday, and we went through. We had a light practice. It was probably a little heavier than a walkthrough. We were a little worried about what they were going to do to it, but we came in and that was actually Thursday. They had a practice, and then it looked great on Friday. Couldn't even tell they were out there. Usually when they walk through, even on a normal year, they kind of beat up the paint a little bit, where they stand, but everything did great. So one of the things we did put in our paint is we dumped a decent amount of denatured alcohol into each bucket to try to help it dry faster. I don't know that if it did help or not, but we think it did. We had heard that it did. So that was the first game. So we got that done. Huge relief. But the season, that was the first game. We've still got a whole season to do. So between game 1 and 2, we came in. We mowed on the Saturday after the game. We went out with a foliar app, double cut at 5/8 on Sunday, light top dressing of green sand. We solid time the field just to the sod comes in, it's root bound. We were trying to push some roots down a little bit, rolled it twice, raised them on height. And then on Wednesday was the decision to leave the field. So the whole time, we thought, hey, look, we know this is going to hold up. We know we're going to be able to go into game 2, but we didn't know for sure if that was going to happen. I mean, football could have came out and said, you told us you were replacing it, it needs to be replaced. But it obviously was in great shape. So, I'm talking to Chad on Wednesday like, hey, guess what? We don't need you this week. So he's got all his guys on standby, I'm sure, waiting for that call. But we didn't have to do it. Friday, we paint the field again. Friday morning before practice, we have practice in game 2. So here we are for Louisville, game 2. In my opinion, it looks great. The green sand down the middle helped a little bit, but the wear, we're still in September. Bermuda's thriving. The sod Chad brought in was great, so it held up really well. You can see we went back with the Argyle after the first game, but we're ready for game 2. Game 3 rolls around, Duke, 2 weeks later. We went out with a granular app of 3610, went out some ryegrass, a vertical with some calcium and some potassium on the 15th, and then on the 19th we had a very, very light foliar app. So we were pushing this thing pretty hard. We were trying to recover. We did decide to reside down the middle on the 20th. So Chad came in, and what we learned is we didn't have to do it on Thursday night. We could move it up to Wednesday night if we needed to. Whatever night worked better for, whatever night the weather was better, whatever night worked better for Chad, and there was a lot of talking. I had daily conversations with our football staff. Coach Fedora and I walked the field many a times, and he would say, I never knew what he was going to say, but he would say, oh, it looks great. And, what are you going to reside it? A lot of times he did leave it up to us. Later on, he started pushing. When they realized that they could go home for the night and come back in the morning and have a new field, then it started to be just reside it, So we had to put the brakes on that a little bit. But, we get to the Duke game. So like I said, we did the first game we did the whole field. For this Duke game, we did just down the middle. We took an old grass saver, folded it out, threw some plywood and some stuff over it to make a makeshift road, and we sodded. You can see it right there in the picture on the right, down the middle. Sod's blended in really well. It's hard to tell, really hard to tell that it's sodded. Here it is, ready to go for the game again. I think you almost had to be looking for it. I'm sure people came to the game and had no idea that we had done anything to the field. So, we're a couple games in now, a few games in, and we're doing pretty good. So Notre Dame rolls around. This is a game where we're going to do the whole field. We want it to look great on TV. We assumed it would be pretty beat up by now. You see we did some aerifying, went out with some rye again, another foliar wrap. We ended up sodding a 4,000 square foot square right about the 35-yard line where our defense would not move. We tried to get them to move the ball during practice, but they wouldn't. So we do this sod, go with another foliar wrap, and then we decided we had 25 tons of green sand delivered. Let's put it all out. So I got a little happy, put way too much sand out. We really turned it into a beach, and I got worried. I was like, man, they're not going to like this. So the good thing about this irrigation system we have, when we turn it on, it drops a lot of water really quick. It's like a heavy rain. So, we knew we could run a heavy cycle, wash the sand in, we would be fine. So skipped a little bit. This is that square we're taking out right here. So I'll go back to that picture. But that square is right there in the middle of the field. Chad and I did a lot of talking. This is the third time we've sodded. This is the third different way we've sodded. Like I said, we did the whole field the first time. We did the middle the second time, and now we're doing a small square. And this was really a lot harder than it looked because we had to be careful and not ruin the outside of that square. Chad brought up the idea to me to do what we're doing right here. The sod wasn't rooted, so we didn't have to cut it up. I don't know if you guys had done this before or what, but this was y'all's idea, and we were on board for anything.
It was my idea, but they weren't very happy about it. But it's just, the sod's heavy, it stays put. It really doesn't root. I saw a lot of that happen, the Twitter chat, like even for the Chiefs game. It's not going to root. Well, it doesn't have to root. It's not designed to root. It doesn't need to root. But so we could just roll it up and get it started and try to leave a light footprint because sometimes you screw up more than you help. And so we use a product called Track Mat. It's like plastic plywood. It's pretty expensive, but it's very good stuff. It doesn't splinter and all the things that plywood does. But so we made a border around that. We could put the sod on that. We're very gentle getting on and off the field. But that's not the midfield logo. That's the 35. It's sort of a weird place, but
yeah. So we would bring 2 new rolls on, take 2 new rolls off, try to minimize. We would take different routes to get to that area on the field to minimize the wear. We didn't want to wear out one spot. But it went pretty well. So, like I said, we got a little heavy with the top dressing. We top dressed it very heavy, and you can see over on the left side of the field. The corner irrigation gun is ran right here, but that's the green sand and the dye, and it looks great. But it was too sandy, so we ran a very, very heavy cycle. And we learned a tough lesson on this one. After this heavy cycle, it washed all the dye off of the sand. So we ran this overnight. We came in the next morning, and we were like, holy crap, what did we do? There was white sand everywhere. So we made it look worse by doing that than if we would have just left it alone. So we broke out the sprayer. I think we had some par, some green longer. We sprayed it. And at this point, we still weren't very thrilled. We're like, look, biggest game of the year, national TV, and so far this is probably the worst we've looked all year. We had a pretty good weather. Got it painted up. The paint kind of takes your eyes off of some of the bad spots. So overall, it turned out pretty good. So, like I said, by this time of the year, we were in 4 games in. We have sodded 3 times, but it's just 1 full and 2 partial. So we're way under what we thought we would be sodding by this point in the year. So, everything's going pretty good at this point. After the Notre Dame game, we solid-tined it again. Went out with some more granular fertilizer. And then Monday through Thursday, we really just cleaned it up, getting it ready for the Virginia game. Painted the field. I don't have a picture from the Virginia game for some reason, but it didn't look a lot different from the Notre Dame game. So we were really pleased with how it turned out. Going into Miami, we're getting cold this time of year, so we're starting to get some frost. But we, due to the cold weather and just some other things, we decided to come in on Monday. Monday was our off day. We didn't practice on Monday. So we decided to come in and just redo the whole field on Monday, knowing we would have a couple practice on the field. But what we realized was they didn't really hurt it as bad as we thought during practice, so we were okay with that. We got a really heavy thunderstorm while we were resodding that night. After that, we went out with a foliar app, some rye. And then Tuesday through Thursday, we had 2 really hard frosts. We were mowing at 3/4. We lost a lot of the color in the sod. We could have went out and dyed it again, but we really didn't want to dye it that close to the game. Our equipment manager, they work with us. We try to work with them and not dye and ruin uniforms, things like that. So here we are. We had 1.5 inches of rain in a little less than 2 hours. We were so close to being done, and we get this. Everybody kind of scrambled went in the tunnel, and then
probably the hardest I've ever seen it rain.
Yeah, we're down to a sand-based field with a brand new collector right under that, and it's raining hard enough to where that water's not going anywhere immediately. So it was a lot of rain, and then here we are with this one.
We, Casey calls you on a Sunday night and say, "Hey, let's sod tomorrow," and so I got in this picture. I've got 3 superintendents from 3 different jobs there, along with all my other guys. And so we didn't have any raincoats or whatever. So, you know, everything is Carolina blue in Chapel Hill, so including their garbage bags. So that was our new rainwear.
And those are for sale if anybody wants one.
But
I'll get you one.
it was just a free for all, you know, a lot of fun. But you never, somehow it had to happen, so you just got in there and got with it. But after the rain event, we got the last little bit of sod laid, got out of there and let them paint.
So, you know, like I said, we had the 2 hard frost, really took a lot of color out of the field. This field played as good as any game we've had the whole year. You know, really, it didn't tear up hardly at all. You know, people ask, what's wrong with the field? What's wrong with the field? Well, nothing was wrong with it. We just lost the color, and we could have fixed that, but we chose not to. So it played fine. That was really all that mattered. So, you know, going into the last game of the year. So here it's getting really cold in November. Like I said, we had planned on doing a full resod for this game. At this point in the year, we've used so much less sod and spent so much less money than we even thought we would do. So we decided, let's go ahead and resod it. We wanted to feel good for the upcoming high school games and the lacrosse season coming up. So, you know, last game of the year, here's just a couple pictures. I think the sod came in great shape. You know, this is went as good as we could have wanted it to go. You know, postseason summary. We had 7 walkthroughs, over 65 practices, and 7 home games in this span. We planned for 7 full resods. We budgeted for that. Chad saved, you know, 500,000 square feet of sod for us. And we budgeted right under $1 million if we needed it. What we actually ended up using this year, or that year in 2017, was 3 full fields and 2 partials. You know, we used just a little bit over 200,000 square feet, and we spent a total of $477,000 of the $1 million that we budgeted. So, you know, looking back, we made a great decision. We saved a lot of money. The synthetic would have been 1.4 plus.
And then whatever to take it out.
Yeah. So, you know, right now we're sitting really pretty. I mean, we kept grass in the field, and we kept grass in the stadium. That's what the team wanted. So, you know, overall, it's turned out to be a really, really good decision. There was a lot of hard work involved, a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights. But you know, in the end, it was really worth it. You know, right here, I think some of the key takeaways that we learned during this, and that I think we want to pass on to everybody listening is, you know, the communication and planning aspect. Explore all the options. I mean, we were dead set on going synthetic. I mean, everybody just assumed this is what we've got to do. So, you know, we looked at all the options, communicate with the coaches and your staff, administrators, let everybody have input. We let Coach Fedor and the staff have input, and we benefited from it. And then once you have a plan, get everybody on board with it. Be transparent. Don't hide anything from anybody. You know, football was honest with us. We were honest with them. I mean, things went pretty well. Coordination and execution, that was between Chad and myself. You know, can't be too prepared. Like we planned for 6 or 7 months, and then it went chaos on the first time we did it. But because we had done so much planning, it ended up working out. And then making the adjustments as we went. You know, we learned that first night. Like, one example is how crazy the parking lot was and how much it really hurt production and things. So, you know, we adjusted that for the later resides, and then, you know, planned for the worst, hope for the best. You know, Chad had backup equipment sitting waiting. So if one piece of equipment broke down, we just rolled another piece out. He didn't have to go back to Charlotte and get another one, things like that. And then the last thing is use all the available resources that you have. Trust people like Chad and the companies that are out there. We had this idea, but there's no chance we could have pulled it off without the help and the guidance. And you know, we leaned on him a lot, you know, just for advice and what would you do here, and, you know, should we reside? I mean, we trusted him a lot. And then, you know, get advice from ideas from everybody in the industry. There's a lot of you in this room that I probably picked up the phone and called and said, hey, you know, am I crazy for even thinking this is possible? You know, people gave me tips. People were willing to help. Some of you talked me off the ledge a couple times. So, there's a lot of people in our industry that are willing to help. I think we all want to see each other succeed. So, use the people in our industry.
We just got a few minutes, I think, Randy. Okay. So, because of all that, Casey and his crew submitted and won the Field of the Year for 2018. They'll be awarded that at our awards banquet Friday night, right? And so, and you can see why. I mean, it's pretty crazy. They really an example of what can happen and what is possible. I think
real quick, even though we made it through that first season, I know we've got really limited time, so I'll run through a couple things really quick. It didn't end right there. We had lacrosse coming up, so that's what that asterisk on that one season's for. We thought it was going to be one season. It's turned out to be two, and we're still not done. So we may have spring ball in the stadium again this year. So it seems like it's a never-ending thing.
We weren't quite as well planned for year two.
No.
I mean, we thought that we at least knew what to do.
After that last game, these are a couple of the things we dealt with. I mean, Ryan Switzer, one of our players, tweeted out, let's have a snowball fight on the field, and this is what you get. We hosted lacrosse, so we're in January, February trying to host lacrosse on a frozen field that football's conditioning on at the same time. So, got a lot of stuff going on there. As the season went, or as it got warmer, the field started to get better, but we still had some wear areas from football. But men's and women's lacrosse, graduation again. This is the damage when graduation got done. We were going to come in after this, reside it, grade it, get it right. I got a phone call that day saying, hey, women's lacrosse wants to host an NCAA game Saturday. Can we do it? Chad's guys were unloading the truck to reside, and I had to make them put the equipment back on the truck. We ended up, there's what we've got. So this is on Tuesday. We've got a game on Saturday. We didn't plan for that, but it was to go to the Final Four, so our women wanted to play in our stadium. We dyed it. We got it in pretty good shape for them. They won. They made it to the Final Four. So, this just goes back to everything was changing. Nothing that we had planned, really stayed. Because of that, we didn't get to reside. We missed our window. So we decided to let's grow this in. So we spent the summer, aerifying, top dressing, growing it in. We had great response with the latitude and the grow in. We almost had it perfect, and we have a hydraulic leak a week before the first practice. So it's just, a lot of things got thrown on us. But, it grew out. That's about a week later. We're ready for 2018 season. You can see they didn't want the other sideways fields this year, but, we went through season 2 last year. Season 2 was more difficult. It was the wettest year we've ever had in Chapel Hill. That's what we were dealing with. We would get a thunderstorm, and because we didn't plan on doing this but for one season, and we had to do this overnight, the grade of the field got off a little bit. We couldn't come in and till it and grade it. So, you can see where we get some low spots and water, but, it's been a long 2 years, but it's been worth it. We're 2 years in. We still haven't spent $1.4 million, so we're still under that number. And then
it still maybe have used about the same amount of sod that we were worst case forecasting in year one after